A strong shock, the girl subconsciously grabbed the stranger's hand, but because of too much panic, did not notice that she had scratched someone else. Although the man felt offended, but seeing her panic, he did not dodge. He even grabbed her hand to reassure her. When Amy calmed down, only then did she accidentally find the man 2 wounds. She apologized repeatedly. She said that it was the first time she had ever flown. Then she subconsciously took out a band-aid from her bag and put it on him. Seeing this cute band-aid and this shy and cute girl across from him, Jack smiled slightly. In the face of Jack's unblinking eyes, Amy's heart was racing and she didn't know what to do. But when Jack was about to introduce himself, but the stewardess interrupted him. They were ready to leave too. Jack felt a little regret. Little did he know that their destiny was already sealed. A few days later, Jack saw the cute girl again. Amy also recognized Jack from the band-aid on the man's hand. Between laughing and talking, Jack was already attracted by the gentle voice and smile. Jack had already been captivated by the soft voice and smile. This time he would not miss. Invited Amy to dinner. The two of them had a great conversation. Jack had never met such a simple girl. A fair lady. A gentleman is a gentleman. Amy's mischievousness made Jack's heart flutter, and Jack's tenderness makes Amy unforgettable. On another date, the two of them kissed passionately by the Pearl River. From then on, the two of them have never been apart again. They ignored the eyes of the people, embracing in the street, dancing under the drunken music. 2 people in 1 house, 3 meals, 4 seasons, so sweet. But just when Amy found out she was pregnant, Jack was urgently called back by his family to deal with a family matter. Before leaving, Amy gave Jack a watch. Inside was a picture of them, after a year together. He was obsessed with this relationship. She couldn't imagine how Jack would live after he left. That's when Jack took out the proposal ring he had quietly prepared. Amy was particularly moved and cried instantly. It was the best promise Jack had ever given her before he left. Amy thought to herself that when he came back, then tell him about the pregnancy. But not long after Jack left, her cousin told Amy about Jack's true identity. It turned out that Jack was born in a gangster family. They had a local enemy of equal strength. The 2 families were in constant conflict with each other. They had lost a lot of money. They hoped to end the dispute by marriage. And Jack is the sacrifice of this marriage. If Jack does not agree, then the enemy will go on a killing spree. And the biggest obstacle now is Amy. Jack's cousin called the doctor, trying to get rid of the baby, and threatened her to disappear, or she would be treated badly. Amy's skinny body is unable to resist. She asked Jack's brother for help, but there was nothing he could do. Just as the doctor was about to strike, Amy wisely kicked the doctor and immediately got up and ran away. Unexpectedly, she was accidentally hit by a car. Luckily, she only suffered some superficial injuries. There is no serious injury. Meanwhile, Jack's family were discussing with their enemies about reconciliation. Jack, who had just learned of the marriage, did not accept such an arrangement. He was about to rise an object. The enemies were ready to fight right away. He had no choice but to walk out of the meeting room in a rage. His cousin rushed over to scold Jack for being too selfish and self-serving. He couldn't let one woman ruin the whole family. Jack didn't want to talk to him, but when he walked away, his cousin said he had already told Amy what had happened. Jack was very angry when he heard this. He rushed over and almost fought. He immediately went to the plane to go back to explain to Amy. But at the same time, brother was already persuading Amy to leave the place, only by doing so, to protect the lives of Jack and the child. But Amy was heartbroken, but there was nothing she could do. By the time Jack got back, Amy had already moved away. He knew it was all his brother's doing. He punched him straight in the face. When he contacted Amy, he didn't realize that his phone was already off. He immediately went to Amy's best friend's house to look for her, but the girlfriend said Amy was not here. No need to waste time. At the same time, Jack saw Amy standing by the upstairs window peeking in. Jack was very excited. He tried desperately to break in, but he was stopped by her best friend's boyfriend. In a tug of war, Jack's gun fell out. When he picked it up from the ground, he was seen by a passing police officer. They thought this was a dangerous man, so they took him into custody. Seeing the woman he loved crying in front of his eyes, Jack was very upset. Eventually, Jack was deported, unable to return. Under the continuous pressure of his family, he had no choice but to agree to the family's marriage, and Amy was helpless to leave this sad place. He returned home and told his father that he was pregnant. His father was shocked. He couldn't accept that his daughter was pregnant out of wedlock. Amy, on the other hand, insisted on keeping the baby. She can't just leave her and Jack's baby behind. Dad is very traditional. He even wanted to break off their relationship. Amy had no choice but to be on her own. Amy had to endure a lot of pain and helplessness, working to earn money while raising her baby. Despite all the talk from the neighbors on the street, Dad's cold shoulder, Amy still wanted to give birth to the baby. Jack, on the other hand, faced with a woman he didn't love on his pillow. This life is really cannot live. He knew very well that this marriage is just a deal. In fact, for the past year, he had been looking for Amy's address. Until this day, he finally found it. So he came all the way here immediately. Just after seeing Amy, he couldn't control his emotions. Although Amy also felt very surprised, but she still suppressed her emotions. At this moment, Amy wanted to go over and hug the man she loved, but she needs to protect him. Jack, on the other hand, did not believe that she had married someone else. She stayed there for a long time, until the sound of a baby crying came from the house. Then he left, lost in thought. He didn't want to spoil his beloved's happiness either. But when Jack disappeared, friends asked her why she was lying. Amy burst into tears. Why can't we be together for life even though we love each other? Jack's mood was also very bad. He felt that everything was so unpredictable. He couldn't be happy anymore. He couldn't stop sinking into the happiness of the past. 10 years passed. Once in an elevator, Jack met Amy. She was still as beautiful as ever. At that moment, his withered heart seemed to rekindle a spark. He stared blankly at the child with the same name as his own. A long-lost memory came back to him. And then it dawned on him that he was his son, but his wife was right next to him. He restrained his impulse. After getting rid of his wife, he immediately looked for him. The moment he looked into her eyes, it was as if time had gone back 10 years. This time he would never leave Amy again. Even if he had to fight against the world, he wouldn't leave. Amy also accepted him. She took him to meet the child, but all this was seen by his cousin. He still wanted to threaten Jack. Unexpectedly, Jack began to kill his family. But that's not all. Jack's wife's family also found out about it. They started to prepare for the child. To protect Amy and the child, they had no choice. Jack wanted to end the feud between the two families himself. After he kissed Amy goodbye, he went to the enemy's place alone. As soon as he arrived, his wife pointed a gun at him and Jack questioned. The brother saw his sister hesitating. He was also a little impatient. He also started to encourage from behind. He thought back to the time with Amy. For Amy and the child, Jack felt it was time to make a decision. There was a gunshot. Jack pulled the trigger himself. All the hatred disappeared with this shot. No one expected 10 years of love, but it became an eternal separation. I want to spend the rest of my life to protect you.